Welcome, ASL RECON members. We have another ASL Game of the Month review number 3. This is between the Free French Partisans and the German units coming on in Convoy. Half-track reinforcements coming on later. We don't know when. Depends on when the action starts. So that has a big impact on the scenario. Hopefully you'll get to see the differences between whether they come early, whether they come on late. I think you may have seen my game already, my live game. If you want to watch that, and go watch that. It's under the pretty much the same title. And check that out for exact detailed gameplay as it happens. So what we're going to cover this week are games from ASL beginners to ASL veterans. Because the one thing common in each of these games, mistakes are happening. Whether the mistakes are something simple or something, quote, egregious to the rules. Maybe they violated the rule blatantly or whatever. But as you see, a lot of times, even though the players have either, quote, violated a rule or gotten something wrong or something like that, to be honest with you, I don't really think it made that much of an impact at all during the game. So if you're a new ASL player, ASL SK player, or just a general war gamer and you want to try out a little bit of ASL, don't worry about making mistakes. You've got players that have played for 3 to 6 months and are making very minimal mistakes in terms of rules, and you've got players that are playing for 20, 30 years that still don't understand certain rules of the game. That's just the nature of ASL. But the best thing about it is you still get to have the same amount of fun and excitement that we love from the game. So, given that, everyone makes mistakes, and they pretty much don't matter too much, right? The only real time they matter is like if you're in a tournament, and even then, people are making mistakes there left and right. So, don't think that they're expert players at a tournament. They're just attendees. But let's get going with these scenarios, and I hope you enjoy it. Leave your comments down below, subscribe, and that way you'll see videos popping up and stuff like that all the time. Hopefully we'll be getting some more out to you guys, but let's get with the action. All right, gentlemen, I am in ASL RECON on the Vasl server. I think there's Craig and I in the room. I have my game loaded, although some of you may have seen my replay. I'm going to burn through my game just to give you an example of so we're just kind of reminding you how the partisans kind of like pop up and enter the fray. And so just as an example from that, we're not going to go over, if you guys want to go over like things you've seen in the game, we could do that after I cover the other replays. I think I got 3 other replays slated for this, and each one offers something interesting to denote whether and one thing to note is that what you'll be seeing today is pretty much exactly what you'll be experiencing while you're learning ASL. Period. You're going to see mistakes left and right, but what you'll see is decent play, fun play, and guys trying to make heads or tails of the victory conditions and the scenario special rules. And it's just funny, you know, and it's just a perfect example of how different players play the same scenario and interpret things differently. And whether that's, you know, technically, yeah, you didn't play it right, you know, do we really care? You're sitting here rolling some dice and you screwed up a rule or two, not a big deal. This is the key, and this is the core environment that you'll be experiencing as you're learning ASL. And like I say, I think just from the handful of scenarios gives us some perfect examples from my interpretation of what I interpret the scenario special rules from. And I've been rules digging and crap like that. And that's why you have, you know, Game Squad with 8,020 years and 80,000 responses to a particular Q&A or some shit like that. because people interpret things differently. But, you know, we're not here to really, well, I guess we kind of here can be here to interpret them. But I just want to show you that, you know, it's okay to make mistakes. You're going to make mistakes. If you're not making a mistake, then you're just a robot. And if you're a robot, you're probably not enjoying the game. So, and hopefully everyone's here to enjoy the game. So, Price of Impatience. This one's thank you for being patient on this one. This one should have been done at the beginning of the month, but there was one other log I was waiting for, and that log actually gives a couple more learning things. So let's go with this one here. I'm going to go just sort of, I just want you guys to see, just remember, this will be like 3 minutes, about how and where the partisans pop up and kind of what they have to deal with. I have some comments on the scenario overall at the end, but it's not going to impact this. So I come on, and again, playing Kevin, I just wanted to do something differently, and not go down the middle, because that's probably where they are. If you're synced with me, you can see the French markers up in the top. That is their setup area, and so that's a reminder to me as a device where I can put markers there to distinguish where I can anticipate partisans coming on. All right, and so that's just it from oops, not down. I need to actually re-plumb that one. So I just burn my guys forward, snake it along, plop, 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 turn 3. The bad guys show up. Good position, the 7-0 on the top flank. Like I say, he gets a couple casualties. Don't know where the partisans are. This is, of course, where we're discussing essentially releasing the vehicles from the convoy rules. And essentially each one, simply because they were in line of sight to a friendly unit that got attacked, or an enemy unit that popped up during the last turn, they can then be freed from their convoy restrictions. And pretty much, for all intents and purposes, that's the convoy rules in this particular scenario. You have a short area, you only gotta have a couple of units that deal with, and so most of the time when the enemy fires, you're probably going to have a line of sight to one of your units. And actually, let me come back to that in one of the other replays, which is really interesting, and it can really show you how you can force the enemy to remain in convoy. So, but I remembered watching that last night, and so in my opinion, I just wanted to circumvent them, and all the partisans pop up. Notice none of these are point blank shots, other than the W2 shot that I popped, and he blew up the Kubel wagon with the 6+1 leader in it. Good shot. And then I just took that one guy, the 447. I just want to get off the board. Again, I described that in the video. I just want to get those. Because once he breaks, it can be hard for him to rally. And this unit in the bottom is pretty much the sacrificial lamb. That was probably an error on my part, but just to kind of keep his other units engaged. Like if he had units, well, he does. You'll see them coming in U6 V7. I moved him down there to keep those units, quote, engaged or maybe locked in that position, and also to cover that roadway. So if he wanted to pull back, I might get a freebie shot on him. That's not the best spot for that half track, but that's where I put him. I just didn't want him running down the road, or guys crossing the road, pretty much. I really don't care. And 2 firepower is not much from the AA machine gun. And then notice where the partisans are coming. They were centralized, and they start moving back. These guys here move up, and these guys just jump on me like, wolves on a sheep, and they just blast the living shit out of me. But notice it's turn 5. And so these two partisans, good and bad, are stuck away from the battle. And that's, again, good and bad for both parties in this spot. And I'll explain to you why that kind of helps both sides. Trucks. Notice my trucks are pretty much still intermixed amongst my units. And we'll see how that differs in another replay. And I try to burn them off on bypassing. And if these guys want to take shots, they can. And then I'm trying to get some other units in position. He gets a decent shot at mobilization on the AT gun. Huge, huge thing here. Remember, points. We're looking at points off the map. And so that's the biggest thing we have to look for. And that's what you need. And I didn't really even realize what the Partisan can do in this particular scenario, and something that he can look at until last night when I was reflecting on the numbers of the scenario. And that was based upon seeing the different replays and seeing everyone getting blown to shit, or like me trying to just kind of avoid them. My job was to avoid them at all costs and try to maximize the points getting off. Force the Partisan to come to me and try to get off. I did a good job, but as it turns out, I got to hunt some Partisans down, try to kill them. You know, I did a good job at that. Got a lucky overrun up there, which is actually really fun. When you overrun, you never know what the hell's going to happen in the game. You just don't, so it's kind of fun. Broken units, you know, Partisans are coming. I get a lucky shot there to break him. Try to drop smoke. Nothing happens. And Richter makes a shot. And Kevin with the 337 does a, average dice roll. Look at the dice roll, guys. 7. That is what I anticipate him rolling. That's what he rolls. But I get pinned, and the other guy didn't rally, and the other guys can't get off. So that was my loss there. But very close game, very fun game, and simply because I want to not take the standard, I want to call cookie cutter approach to the scenario. So notice where the Partisans are. I pretty much try to bypass them all. Killed these guys down here. This guy came to engage, broke. This guy, I moved over to engage him. This guy had some engagement involved, so pretty much 4 squads. I was pretty much facing 4 squads the entire game for my force, and I still didn't come out ahead, unfortunately. 2 guys were pretty much pinned here. 1 guy moves this direction. I get a lucky shot, breaks him, takes him out of the, just takes him out of the fight. And then this Partisan here doesn't really need to destroy this, but he could move there. Whatever my opponent chose to do, my 658 had nothing else to do but try to hunt them down. And so that's my little quick replay there. So I just want to show you how the Partisans engaged in this particular scenario, and that's the key to the game. I mean, the allies or the Axis can take whatever path they want. The onus is on when the Partisans are going to strike in this scenario. And so let me load up. I'm going to close this one here. And let me load up. I've got them numbered. Jim and Craig's game. I just have it loaded for number 1. Okay. So go ahead. You resync with me on there, and then what I'll do is I'll explain about what the Partisan needs to get done, and then we could explain about we could talk about the vulnerabilities of both sides. So exit victory points are pretty standard. You have to exit, obviously 40 points. The Germans, when you guys calculate it pregame, in my calculation, I have 48 points. 22 of those are from the half tracks, and including the armor leader. So you only have 26 on board, and those are vulnerable. The scenario special rules we won't get into right now, but with only 6 Partisan squads, you think, okay, he's got 48 points. If the Partisan, like in my particular situation, I wanted to avoid the Partisan interaction, make him come to me. And so that kind of worked most of the game. A couple things I had to engage in. When the Partisan, there's like a breaking point for the Partisans. When the Partisan reaches 9, either 8 or 9 victory points, casualty victory points, right? My game, my leader and Kugelwagen got blown up right the first shot. Boom. So that's 2. And if you pop up another truck and another squad, that's going to be 3 more. So that's 5. Right, so right there, you already have 5 of the total 48 for him to get off. And then my AT gun got immobilized and the crew essentially got eliminated later on. So that was 5 more points I was gone. So I was down 10 points. And what that forced me as the Germans is now I have to go engage the Partisans. And the Partisans at that point can just run away. They could just run away. And there's really not a lot of time in the scenario to deal with that. You either have to bust their ass early, really go after them to kill them, to reduce the number of victory points you need to get off, or hopefully, or run the gauntlet, sort of like I did, is hopefully not have to do that, because the Partisans will not surrender via the route phase method versus, at all, and they'll always try to route away from the SS, and or from the German side in this case. That's just what the Partisans do. So, and they have a high sniper of 5. So even if the Germans are taking pot shots at you in buildings and things like that, you'll see the result of what happens in that instance. And that sniper 5 is kind of like another enemy on their side that the Germans almost can't do anything about. And so, again, I think the key breaking point is 7 or 8 casualty victory points. You don't have to get exactly, taken below before he has to get off, because you know where he's going, right? He's got to get off the GG, I think the GG row, right? Yeah, GG5, GG6 on the right-hand side. I think my big head, no, on the right-hand side. You know he's going there. That's where the German's going to end up by the end of the game. So if you have a couple guys in the vicinity cover that road or cover those hexes, then you're pretty much golden. And if he wants to take a force there to secure that exit before he has to exit, then he can do that. But as you note in the OB, there's 22 on board, and let's say you lose all the trucks. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. There's 7 trucks in the game. And if you lose them all or can't move them off, which losing them means immobilization or just simply destruction by getting shot at, and they are extremely vulnerable to fire. Even a 2 firepower shot, usually a 6 firepower adjacent shot, a 6 will immobilize, a 5 will destroy, and a 3 or less will cause it to burn. And we'll see a couple burning trucks here in the next couple of games. So the trucks are very vulnerable, and really, if you could pop the trucks, most of your game is done. And especially if you're destroying trucks, especially early in the beginning of the game, it's very likely that someone's going to be in the truck. And then for the starter kit players that haven't played with a lot of vehicles, there is a crew survival number. So once you destroy the truck, if you take I'm just going to clone this here. We have a truck here. All vehicles now have a crew survival number on them, which means passengers, riders, or crew could survive the destruction of the vehicle in certain instances. So when you blow it up like that, this one has a lowercase CS of 6. So there's a lowercase CS of 6, and there's an uppercase CS of 6. I'm not sure where the other vehicles are in here. But the lowercase simply means there is no inherent crew for you to roll for. So if a truck's just driving by himself and you blow it up, it's done, it's wrecked, it's burning, whatever the result is of your shot, there's no roll because there's no crew in that vehicle. Usually you have a crew in armed vehicles. Like if that truck had a machine gun on it, there'll have to be a crew normally, there are exceptions, that will be manning that machine gun. There's always exceptions to every rule in ASL, so just get used to it and expect it. So if there is a crew within that vehicle and there's no passengers or riders on it, the CS value on the backside will be capitalized. That's in Vasl, and that's also in your normal counters. So if it's a capital CS, it's like capital adjacent and lowercase adjacent, they mean different things. Capital CS means there's an inherent crew, inherent vehicular crew, which is usually a 127 that could pop out and enter the fray. So in this case, that's not the case. Only the half tracks will have inherent crews. And what that does in this scenario is, if you should happen to get lucky and destroy a half track for whatever reason, probably the LMG is about the only way you can destroy it. If you destroy it in close combat, there is no crew survival. So when the crew jumps out, they're just assumed to be slaughtered at the same time. I guess part of the close combat. So the only way that a vehicular crew will emerge from a vehicle commonly is where the LMG pops it, blows it up, and then you get lucky for crew survival, and he jumps out, and that's 2 points. That's 2 more points that you can be using to get off the board. So trucks, easy pickings, and if you pop anybody on those trucks, that'll set you over the threshold. A squad's worth 2. Squad and the leader, that's number 5 is the key one. That's 5 points. The gun, 5 points. So if you blow up either one of those vehicles, 2 vehicles is all you really need to do to destroy, to be ahead of the game, to force the SS to come after you. They can't win unless they get the points after you, and we'll come across a game like that. So I just kind of want to reiterate where if you're playing the Partisans, you could play in such that you just kind of run backwards and do nothing. But I think a key point to make your game easier is to destroy those units that give more value than what you can give up. And what I mean by that is, when I shoot at somebody, I'm going to lose my hidden status. And so I'm going to be hopefully shooting point blank, maximize my firepower. Since I'm probably going to be overwhelmed in wherever I set up, like if I set up way in the front, probably going to be overwhelmed. This probably going to be overwhelmed. V7, there's I think probably 50-50 chance you could probably get away from there. And the R buildings over here, you actually might be able to survive simply because there's a bunch of stone buildings clumped together, and it stops the Germans from keep going to the right hand side. So the troops up in the front want to target the higher value units. They don't want to be shooting the 6+1 leader of the Kubelwagen, because you're essentially going to be giving up 2 points for his removal off the board. You don't want to go even, because that doesn't really do you any good. What you want to do is you want to kill a squad and a truck, squad leader truck, or the gun and the truck and the crew. Those are the high points. The 5s and the 3s is really your primary targets. You could probably ignore the 2-pointers. There's only 2 2-pointers: the squad at the beginning and the leader, the lone leader by himself. And of course, the half tracks are big points, but the half tracks are a different story. So if you die, but you kill 5 points of him, you're 3 points ahead overall. And so he's still in the doghouse for that matter. So that's kind of my gist on what the Partisans kind of have to look for in terms of managing their game, is making sure to inflict as massive casualties and giving up as few casualties as possible for them. Because if they all die, 12, 13, 14, 15 points that the Germans don't have to move off the board. And that's a lot. That's pretty much none of the half tracks have to go off if all the Partisans are dead. So, okay, let's see how these Partisans react to this thing here. Zip it on like normal. Now here, obviously, you might say to yourself, hey, what the hell's going on here? And this is where ASL, just being an ASL player, comes into play. So, convoy status, you pretty much can't do anything but remain in convoy. Scenario special rules, and the funny thing is one of the SSRs allows the convoys to have passengers. Normally a convoy does not have any passengers, and it's just sort of just like the trucks by itself. But the scenario special rule says, that doesn't apply. There's still passengers, but all the other rules of the convoy apply, where you can't unload guys in your convoy because those units are part of the convoy. But as you'll see, it doesn't really matter in terms of the gameplay. So even though this is technically an error of the rules, but it's not a big deal, and you'll see how it works. Remember what I said about the trucks, and you notice all the trucks are now by themselves. So we got the 6+1 scouting out, and other guys are moving out. So Partisans up front shooting, and you notice all the infantry are going up top, and all the vehicles are going unescorted in the middle. And a sniper, wow, Sniper, yeah, wounds and kills the 6+1. That's pretty sad. I didn't even notice that earlier. That's unfortunate. So again, we have our squad here. Broke, can't route anywhere, insta dies. So right now, straight off the board, we have a 1-to-2 ratio. The Germans are ahead. So now they've gotten 1 point off the board for all intents and purposes. And there's one less guy they have to deal with, more importantly. Prep fire. This guy, I think, turns out to be Mr. Badass in the game. So he close combats that thing, destroys that vehicle. And, yeah, because if you look at your close combat tables, the vehicle wasn't in motion, it appeared, apparently. But you have a unarmored vehicle is -3. And then a vehicle, technically you got a -1 for versus a vehicle with no manned usable MG. That's another -1. So against that particular truck, the Cuba wagon or a truck, it looks like you have a minimum -4. I won't even bother with the other modifiers. I don't think there are any. I think there's no, they're not AFVs because that's just a vehicle versus a vehicle. Notice that there's versus vehicle and then versus open top armored AFV. So those -2s and -1s you don't apply versus unarmored vehicles. Only the unarmored vehicle one, which is a little green star, and then the star with a versus a vehicle with no manned usable MGs. Simply because some unarmored vehicles can be armed, as I would describe earlier. So close combat value of 5 for the 337. -4 makes it a 9 for the mobilization. All he needs to do is roll a 9 and that vehicle's not getting off. But he happens to destroy it, same thing, 9 or destruction, it's gone. And in this case, the Kuba wagon leaves no wreck, but he got vaporized. So now it's even in terms of points. And then the half tracks come on. They button up a little bit up in here. I think they played most of the game buttoned up and used their armaments there. Of course, again, that's just part of getting used to some vehicles. These are open top vehicles, all open top vehicles, as denoted by the white sort of filling in of the vehicle, means that it must be open top, or it's open top normally, which means the crew is exposed, and that you must fire while crew exposed. You can't fire if you're buttoned up, but that's okay, because again, this is just part of learning the different vehicle types, and this just comes with playing games with other players and going back to the rules. Say, hey, maybe the Partisan had a tough time with the half tracks, can't do anything against them, and maybe he goes back and read the rules on half tracks and CE status and things like that, and that's how you run across. Oh, hey, we kind of screwed that up, but not a big deal. Again, that's what we're here for, is to learn these little things that just add up in an ASL game. We're not going to remember them all. We're just not. I don't care how long you've played. You're probably not going to remember it all, because there's so much stuff to go to do. And other than just learning the rules, now we have to implement the rules, and we're all about trying to implement the rules here. Learning is, obviously we learn as well, but knowing a rule and how to, I know how to fly a plane, but can I fly a plane? Ain't no way in hell. I'll wreck that thing. I know the mechanics of flying a plane, but I don't know how to fly a plane. So, broken Partisans run in the back, and we got our Partisan here just running. This guy's awesome. This guy's kind of awesome in this game, to be honest with you. So in this one, we had lots of Partisan pressure up front, and so far looks like somebody got killed. 447 got killed somewhere. And so now we're 2 points up for the Partisans. Another Partisan, the 8-1 shows his ugly face with the LMG. 2, 3, 4. So that's 5 Partisans we have known, and there's a 7-0. So I think there's one more squad left to discover. And look what happened down here. Again, what did I say about that Sniper 5? All right, Craig rolls a task check on number roll 436. I think that's Craig. I think Craig is the Axis. I'm not sure. No. Either way, Jim rolled I think Jim's the Axis. So I think Jim rolled a 5, activates a sniper, comes over here, and Sniper 1 pops that crew. That will recall a CE or open top crew. In that case, I still think it's vulnerable because it's open top. You might have to check that. But anyway, this is how they resolved it. Stuns the crew, so because it's a capital stun, and based on the 1 from the sniper die roll, that vehicle will be recalled, and that is 5 points away from the allied, from the allies' requirement of like 8, the magic number 8 points that he needs to get off. So right now he's at 5. This guy's going to be gone 6, 7, 8, 9, and he's lost 3. So he's at 6 of his 8 points that he needs to slow the Germans down to force them to come after him. And again, you notice all these vehicles, there's nobody around them, and there's another squad hidden somewhere. I think there's another squad hidden somewhere. So they tried to tag out 337. Good smoke shot up here. Nice smoke shot there. Looks like that partisan up top is going to be maybe surrounded. Maybe not. Yep. Looks like he's going to be a goner. Germans just blitz into town. It's kind of cool. We do, the other partisan shows up here. And it looks like there's a German in the half track. Let's see what happens here. So again, there's not much defending these trucks, other than the little half track here and a little half track here in bypass. And you've got the guy in the back. So essentially you've got 3 wolves surrounding a small party of sheep here. And they could easily try to engage them. A couple guys go in motion. We got a nice snake eyes from Craig. Smokes that vehicle and gives cover. Plus it increases the movement points necessary to enter that location, especially on the road. And that's the end of the game here. After the half track gets destroyed as well, because Mr. 8-1 and his partisan jumps into close combat. And again, look at the modifiers for close combat there. Well, number 1, we got leadership modifier -1. We got the close combat value of the squad, which is 5. Add 1 for the leader, which makes it 6. -1 makes it a 7. And I don't think he was in motion. And then you've got what we looked at before. Open top, partially armored AFV makes it a -2. And I think he was closed topped. So I'm not sure if they applied the modifier to that or not. But if that vehicle were closed topped, even though he has an anti-aircraft machine gun or anti-aircraft machine gun available to it, since it's closed top, it can't use that machine gun. So therefore, the modifier for no manned or usable MG as well. So he'd have the -2 open top and -1 for being no MG available. So the modifiers just explode off the chart pretty much. So you got 5, 6 for the leader, 7 for the -1 modifier, and then -3 for being an open top, no MG. So that's a 10. That's a 10 for the mobilization. That's pretty darn good. And he obviously destroyed the vehicle there. Again, giving the partisans 5 more points. And at this point, I think, you're going to lose a couple more trucks because all the partisans are within the center here. And I think the Germans said, I don't have enough points now to get off. And this is turn 5, so the Germans would have 2 turns to try to get points from the partisans. Could they get a couple? Yeah, probably, but I'm not exactly sure how far behind they were. But they had lost 2 half tracks already, which is 10 points out of their 48. So that puts them at 38 right then and there. They've lost, they've lost a couple trucks on the map. One burning, I think there's one here that's blown up. And they've lost a leader and a squad and a half. So the points were a little bit too much for the Germans to be able to handle. So that's where it ends there. Again, the vulnerability of particular sections of this column or the convoy, even though the partisans have like crap for firepower, they get a close combat shot on you, unarmored vehicle, you know, is minus, what is it, -3? -3, unarmored. Every single vehicle in that convoy is a -3, which means if they jump you in close combat, you know, it's going to be an 8 for the mobilization. Just one squad. And so that essentially is taking that one out. And then next phase or the phase before, depending on whose turn it is, he probably prep fired on the other guy, and he just needs a 6 for the mobilization on that unarmored vehicle. So the Partisans are strong in this one here. So again, the it looks like the Germans wanted to try and end around, try and sweep over here. Looked pretty good. I mean, he got good progress. I mean, look where he is on turn 5. That's pretty solid there. It's just that he got bushwhacked here with the rest of the Partisans. Looked like it was a fun game. A couple snipers. Sniper 5, you know. We probably don't want to be taking 6+3 shots in the stone buildings, because that means we need a 4 for morale check. And if we roll 5, pin task check, and we might be able to pin him down and jump in close combat, but that might activate our sniper. So that's something to consider. I wouldn't. 5 snipers are pretty dangerous, especially when your entire OB is either open-topped, casualty victory points that you need to get the hell off the board, or vehicles that can become immobilized. These are all unarmored vehicles. If you had all regular tanks, AFVs, closed top, you know, you're just going to get those off. So, but here they're all almost every single German unit is vulnerable to the sniper. So, any questions about this one? Again, even though they disembarked early, which was not part of the rules, they disembarked early. You know, he had his plan. He went up there. Looks like he conducted his plan, pushed the vehicles through because they're only 1 point apiece. You know, decent try. His just half tracks got bushwhacked. You know, this one got popped and that one got popped, and that's all. Honestly, that's all you really need to hit as the Partisans. And then it puts the Germans behind, and there's really no counterattack from that sort of group of the Germans. And it just looked kind of grim at that point, which is fine, but good attack. Again, one close combat here or there, or maybe another unit 2 could have swapped that around. Not a big deal, but most of the Partisans here were. There's a couple up front. Again, we'll see differences in the setup. These guys were up front. I think there was one here. He was here, and I think he actually made it back here, to be honest with you. And then, you know, they got the job done. You know, most of the infantry went up top. The Partisans really don't need to engage the infantry. They made do with what they had. So it looked pretty good there. Any questions on this one, guys? Like, yeah, the biggest thing that we saw, and I think we discussed it, was the guys jumping on here. I think the other group disembarked some units as well. But overall, you know, whether you disembark them there or disembark them as soon as you get shot, in my opinion, it doesn't make that much of a difference. Because if you disembark them back here, right, then any units over here pretty much have to go the distance of the board in 6 or 7 turns, and they can be shot out in the open. At least in the trucks, they're not getting the -2. So if you disembark them back here and kind of screwed that rule up, it doesn't matter, because now you're kind of punished, because now you got to go. This is 2 movement phases to here. So you're looking at turn. You got 3 moves to get off the board. You really don't have a lot of time to do anything. So it doesn't really give the German an advantage, even though he killed this guy here, no big deal. Because if he moved up here and got attacked here, then they would just disembark there the next turn. Yeah, they might lose a squad or so, but they're pretty much 2 more movement phases ahead of where they were before. So in my opinion, in this particular scenario, it doesn't make a difference, because the Partisans are going to get a piece of them anyway. So, like I said, not that big. I mean, not that big a miscue. And again, that's why we look at our mistakes. Is it an earth-shattering mistake? Yeah, probably not. Probably not. As long as everyone's kind of abiding by what they believe the rules to be, and both players are agreeing on it, that's cool. But there will be some miscues that we all miss, and just things that we don't understand sometimes, and that's normal. And again, I'm learning all the time. I learned 2 or 3 things just last week, and I haven't even played since. So, but just something cool there. So I'm going to end this one, go to the next one. And this one, we're going to go for Yeah, this one, I think this one's relatively short here. This one's between Mark and Doug, and they use the black SS counters here, and again, this is another thing about the scenario special rules. You guys could sync, yeah. This is, let me get some water here first. So when you start, you know, engaging in your ASL games and things like that, we have nationality characteristics. And you guys all know that. That's just standard. But the SS have to be a problem in a lot of scenarios, and this one is no difference. This is an older scenario, A6, which is annual, like 89, I think. I mean, so this some bitch is 33 years old, and so some rules have changed since then. Some clarifications have been made, but many of you guys know that when you have SS in when your units or your OB is designated as SS, and I just looked this up just yesterday, there's a distinction between vehicular SS vehicles and SS infantry. And if your OB designates the vehicles as SS, Aufklärungsabteilung das Reich, the half tracks, or the SS pennant, well, the other ones are just cars, trucks. So nothing, there's no armored cars up in the front, but they're just vehicles, just trucks and half tracks. But the half tracks, the OB describes them as SS, and so therefore their depletion numbers will go up. The morale number won't necessarily go up, because that's, usually, like we had last week or the week before, we talked about the Tigers being a morale level 9. I think Mark reminded us about the morale level on the back side of those. A lot of those Tigers and Panthers, depending on what the vehicle is, ML 9 means your morale level is 9, and that's pretty badass. And so in this instance, like the smoke, and in this game, Doug has an after action report on the game squad, and Mark posted the link to that in the ASL Scenario Archive submission. So if you go to the ASL Scenario Archive, I might actually post it on here as well in the description. You can go to his after action report, and he goes into like what his thoughts were. And Doug had responded to my replay, and so he said, the better shot is to go right down the middle and just weather the fire. And I said, that's fine. I have no problem if that's the way you want to go for it. And I want to see your replay. I want to see your game to show the differences between the strategies. I mean, that's what we're all about here. And so it took him a couple weeks to get up a game, and so he took up the challenge, and got a hold of somebody. He's in the UK, and so I think he's in Scotland, and Mark's in southern England, I believe. And so they're in the same time zone. They got together and they played this game here. And so yeah, I'm glad they gave a submission, because this game shows a couple other things. Again, number one, nationality differences. You'll see some things after they become unconcealed. And squads, it describes the squads as 658s, and then it also says 468s are sometimes SS in early war. Couple other words here and there. It's a pretty small paragraph, not that big a deal. But the scenario special rules trump everything, right? So if it says in Poland in Flames, they have 447s that are SS units. And some of these players may have played Poland in Flames with SS units that are 447s. Well, in this game here, it doesn't specify those units as being SS specifically. So normally SS units are designated with the SS distinction on the counters. And other than that, the scenario special will say, 548s and the 447 are also SS, which can make a difference a little bit in the game. And so it didn't say that. Again, this is a really old scenario. It does say all German squads have assault fire capability. And if you look in the SS section under 825.11, this just says they give them assault fire capability. It doesn't state that they all are SS. And so you can think, and I actually have a note on here that says, are they SS? And simply because the scenario special rule doesn't specifically state they aren't SS, because they don't have that SS distinction on their counter, unless I'm misinterpreting it, then they are not SS, but they have assault fire capability. So if you didn't follow that, then just read A25.11, and that's in the nationality capabilities of SS units. You can apply some of those capabilities to certain units that are outside of that specification. Like, you don't have to be a commando to have scaling ability. You can just grant units scaling ability. You know, you can say, oh, you're stealthy because you're Americans and, you know, whatever. You know, you could change all of it, but they have to be in the scenario special rules. Otherwise, the rulebook takes over. So guys, come down here. Again, nobody's firing. And this is actually pretty interesting what happens here. So I think all these units are in motion. And what Mark does, I think Mark's the Partisan. He assault moves and advance phases right here. And so when he advance phases, I think this might be the beginning of the movement phase here. When he advance phases, the interesting thing develops. And this is actually kind of cool. This unit is not a known unit when he has a concealment on him. But this unit can temporarily reveal himself to cause loss of concealment for the vehicles, because all these vehicles here are in open ground. And in the movement phase, he's just going to drop his concealment temporarily to show that he's a real unit. And all of these units will lose these concealments that come into LOS of this unit. But this unit is not known, is not a known unit for purposes of Convoy abilities to disband. So even though he's revealed this unit and these units and this guy, he has to continue in his convoy motion. Now, of course, he can alter his path, right? He doesn't necessarily have to go down the middle. He could go this way and kind of like bottle up over here. But, I mean, when I saw that, I said, okay, now what you can do is you can just bypass this. But if he anticipates units here, he's just kind of going, you know, out of the firing pan into the fire. And this is kind of what I wanted to avoid in my game. And that's the only reason why I just say, oh, what the hell, I'll go up here and see what happens. So, but this was actually an interesting development. He reveals his hidden unit, keeps his concealment, and then causes all these guys to lose concealment. I'm not sure why. Maybe it was a ploy to maybe alter the Germans' path, seeing all the enemies in front of them. That could have been an option, because now this guy can simply, I mean, they could just simply go this direction. That's an option. But the reinforcements, as per Scenario Special Rule 4, can't enter because no German unit has been fired upon, and they don't have, no German hasn't been fired upon. So even though they see this unit, and even if it's a good order unit, he just loses concealment completely, those half tracks can't come on until the column gets fired upon. So really interesting distinction here. Again, they can remain hidden, the column stays in column. They can lose their hidden status, come on the board, maintain the concealment, the column stays in column, because in the column rules you have to see a known enemy unit. And because it's going to be a real unit, he can temporarily reveal the concealment, which isn't saying to these guys that it's a known enemy unit, because he retains the concealment. It's just to cause loss of concealment for the units here. Again, I'm not sure. The only purpose I think that would be is for maybe to cause a directional change in the convoy. Don't know, because once he fires upon him, let's say they continue to move. He may fire on him anyway. So the convoy turns to covered arc, and they move anyway. See, at this point, right, everyone's in line of sight. If he should happen to have popped up from hidden status, the exact same thing would happen. All of them would lose concealment because they're all moving in line of sight, or even if they're not moving in line of sight because they're vehicles in the open, they would lose their concealment anyway. But again, I'll have to talk to Mark about seeing specifically why he would essentially show a number of his units. The only thing I could think of is changing his path. What do you guys think? Because considering they're going to lose concealment as soon as he shoots at them, because most of these guys going to be in the LOS. Why do you guys have an idea about why he might want to do what he did? I don't know. This is just conjecture here, and Mark's asleep right now. So
I'd say shoot at the end units and wait for the half tracks. Maybe that's what he's thinking.
What about you guys, other guys? If you were to reveal your units like that, why do you think you would reveal? I mean, just to maybe see your opponent. Is your opponent just going to stick with his plan? Go for it, because they're all real units. None of these are dummies. None of these are dummies.
Right, and they have to come in a specific order, correct?
Right. So they can't change order.
So it's not as if it's certainly where everything is. Yeah, I mean, I was thinking maybe if you could randomize the order, then maybe you're doing it just to figure out quickly who's where.
Yeah.
I mean, but apparently that's not.
The guns at the end in this one.
Yeah, maybe that's something that we can't see here. Is that maybe Mark thought that he could randomize them? They just have to be part of it, and he kind of missed that SSR. Don't know. That could be a possibility, and that would be like you said, Mark. That's a valid thing. Is if one thinks that you can randomize the units up, then it will give you more information, and without loss of any sort of like real detriment.
Without too much loss. I mean, obviously he knows where one unit is.
Yeah.
But it might decide it's worth it, to have some kind of scouting mission to kind of figure out where everything is. But as you said, everything is in a very specific order. I mean, you enter, it must enter in the order given. So.
Right. And Jay, you were going to say something, Jay?
No, actually, I had not read the whole scenario card, so I did not know there was a specified order.
Okay.
And so that question's been answered.
Okay, cool. Yeah, and the other thing about the SSR, all buildings are second story or just have a single story first level, except for this location. This hex has a second level location in it. So a lot of guys put their LMGs up there. I think the LMG is pretty good in V7 because if they're going to go down the road, you could fire lane and hit them all at the same time. Low results, but you could possibly hit them all at the same time. But again, people could play any number of ways. You could, because the LMG is pretty powerful against the half tracks. You might not be able to get it out of this area. So,
I'm still pretty slow at fire lanes. So if these guys are moving down here, and you were to shoot to here, does that mean they will all take a shot on that one shot?
In the fire lanes, normally it's only the one unit moving, but when units that are using impulse movement, which convoys use, platoon movement uses, human waves, and bonsai human wave source, almost same thing. They're using impulse movement, so if they all move together through or as that shot comes down and the fire lane's down, everybody gets attacked. So if you were here and you laid down a fire lane, say like right now, right when he moved and fired at this, fired at any unit for that matter, he could fire at this unit and then lay his fire lane back here, and then everybody else would be affected by that fire lane at that same impulse move. Because
so after each impulse, any fire at a unit in that impulse using a fire lane affects all units within that fire lane's effect. So you everything in an impulse move everything that is required to move must move as one. It's basically one very long multi-hex stack.
Yeah, pretty much. That's the easiest way to interpret it, is you're just moving as like one stack, or and I was gonna say one unit, but obviously there's multiple units, but they're all moving together, and anything, the fire lanes essentially is what can shred them like crazy. And that's why fire lanes are very useful against human waves in the bonsais, because they use impulse movement all the time. And there's Mark. No, Mark must have wrote something. I thought Mark was in the room, and he commented 7, but he's not. But yeah, fire lanes. Read up on the fire lanes and impulse. That's 2 rules that come together, that kind of overlap. I'm not sure if it specifies it in the fire lane section, but like I say, as you are reading these other small sections, I think convoys are one page. And it says convoys use impulse movement. What I would do then...
Interesting that there's 8 units in the column, and the LMG goes 8 hexes. Anyway, that was interesting.
Oh, yeah. And so what I do is, what I usually look at, just say it uses impulse movement, and it usually would say D 7.331 or some shit like that. Well, I'll do then, when I'm reading the rules, I'll jump to impulse movement, saying, okay, well, why do I care about impulse movement? What does that mean to me? Instead of reading the entire section, trying to understand what's going on, something like that, I would jump to the impulse rules section, read how impulse applies, and right there it will probably say, it might have a reference to, fire lanes or things like that. And so essentially sometimes you'll be bouncing between a couple sections. But, if you've got the electronic rule book, or you have another version thereof, that you can bounce around pretty quickly. And if you just got the regular pocket rule book or the original one, it's still the same thing. You just kind of flip around, read those little sections, and see, because it will pinpoint where you need to look at where it describes the impulse movement. And you just read that little paragraph. You don't have to read the whole thing, because the impulse movement will probably be like, I think it's described in platoon movement. You don't have to read platoon movement, because this isn't platoon movement, it's impulse movement. So you just read that little section, and then you go right back to wherever you page marked that page, and then that way it'll give you a slightly better understanding of the essentially, in this case, the slinkiness of the convoy, and that way your mind might start tweaking. Oh, what happens if I had just a residual firepower, or if there was a smoke in 1 hex, and the impulse moves through there, that one guy expends 2 movement points to go in there, but these other guys weren't in smoke. Do they expend 1? No, they would expend 2, because it's the highest of the units going in impulse. And so that's when you're looking at those other rules, that you're finding these little things out and piecing it all together. You're not going to be perfect the first time. You're not going to be perfect the second time, or the third or fourth, or maybe you are, but as you always come back to those particular games and other situations where other scenarios might use those rules, then you'll be more familiar with them. Say, oh, I remember this by, playing Price of Impatience, and I just got, waxed because all my guys had to move at the same time, which I, very vulnerable and things like that. So that's kind of like the deciphering of the rule book. And again, how you study the rule book and how you read through the rule book is whatever works best for you is what you need to do. I mean, that's all others too. I'm just telling you how I kind of sometimes approach things. That may or may not be right, because I sometimes go back to rules. Oh shit, I hadn't seen that before. Maybe my perception of it was differently. So now just take a look at the units real quick. And remember what I was saying about SS units and things like that? Let's see, the French. Just a couple things of note. Does anyone note anything in the... I don't know if you guys have the scenario card. If you don't, then I'm going to assume you don't, so I'm just going to skip that. So, but certain things that you might... What things do you see specifically right offhand, just from the squads themselves? Do you see any differences amongst the squads? And this kind of reflects back upon what I was saying about OB
Smoke.
Designated stuff. Smoke from where?
658 has a 2.
Okay. Anybody else have smoke?
Five, 4, 8s.
548s. Look at the 548s. Is there a distinction between the 548s?
Yep, a 4 for smoke.
What about the one in the truck?
Oh yeah, that one says 2.
Right. This guy's designated as SS. This guy's designated as assault engineer.
SS, yeah.
And this guy's designated as SS as well. And this is like a French machine gun. I'm not really sure where that came from. But this should be a 3.8, which makes a difference for this 548, right? Because when he jumps off, that's 8 firepower instead of 6. Again, these little things, these miscues happen all the time. So don't let that fret on your games. Will 1 firepower make a difference? Let's hope not. But spray fire, this unit actually doesn't. This one.
Oh, that's a good point, Stu. Because I'm seeing now that looking at the card, all the 548s are supposed to be assault engineers.
No.
No, that's the card. No, they're just elite.
They'll have
It has a circle
E.
on it. Yeah.
E with the circle. Okay.
Yeah.
It's not A. It's E.
And they don't have the SS symbol. That's very important.
Right. This makes a big difference. So let me clone
So
this.
is this one incorrect then?
They're
in this
both
game?
incorrect.
Yeah.
Got it.
So-
Okay. Thank you.
So if you also notice, the ELR is 4.
Right.
Normally, SS have an ELR of 5. That means when they fail a morale check by greater than 5 on the dice, they split into 2 half squads. That's what the underlined morale factor means on the counter. So you'll see that the 658s have got an underline under the 8. That means that if they fail a morale check by greater than their ELR number, which is normally 5, they would normally split into 2 broken half squads.
Yeah.
However, because the ELR is 4, it is not. They are not considered. The morale is not considered 5. Sorry, the underlined morale still applies, but if they exceed it by more than 4, they will split into 2 broken half squads. The 548 and the 447 do not have underlined morale factors. Therefore, they ELR normally, they break normally.
Right.
Pete, that's confusing, and maybe I don't
Okay.
understand the rule.
Okay.
I thought that
So-
if it was underlined, it was always 5. And since the
They-
ELR for the Germans is 4, I thought that applied to any unit that did not have an underline. So, as example, the crew or the leaders.
It applies
Well,
to it applies to everything. The SSR, what is printed on the scenario card, overrides anything in the rules.
Right.
So when they say ELR of 4, that applies to every unit.
Right. Big distinction. Because normally what I got used to is the 747s, the American paratroopers, having ELR 5 all the time. And so you got used to applying ELR 5, ELR 5, ELR 5. And I think everyone did that. But if you look at A 19.132 in the ASL rulebook, whenever an ASS and SSR, and this is under unit substitution, again, part of ELR failure, which is just another part of the game. Whenever an SSR, not just an OB, specifically assigns an ELR less than or equal to 4 to units of underscore morale factor, they suffer unit replacement normally. And so I think...
yeah, so the 658s actually reduce...
Well, I think the 658s deploy because it has to be an SSR that assigns the SSR to those units.
Yeah,
usually they have the slash now. They have the slash nowadays.
Yeah,
But
this is a very early scenario, so it's not
You're right.
always clear. And there's been no clarification on which units are SS either.
Right.
So there's been no errata issued for this scenario, which is very strange. But I think because it doesn't get played that often, it hasn't come up. because people have made assumptions.
Right. And a matter of fact, the game Pete and I just played, Hidden Gems 3, I have SS units in the scenario, and I have 548s also in the scenario, but the scenario special rules say only the 658s are SS, which just to reiterate the fact that the other guys are not.
Yeah. So in this game, the way I played it, because this is purely based on experience playing other scenarios and playing the way that the rules have always been written, and the way the 447s and the 548s, if they ELR'd, if they failed their morale checks by more than 4, reducing quality, they don't split into half squads.
Right.
The 658s still split into half squads when they break
because of the underscore.
When they ELR, because of the underscore. They just do it more frequently than if they had an ELR of 5.
Right. Right.
But the 548s and the 447s, well, the 548 actually goes down to a 447.
Yeah.
The 447 goes down to a 436.
Right. And
so it's very, because they are not specified as SS and they are normal German unit counters, hence the circled E and the second line designation, they don't count as SS.
Right. And the lack of SSR, saying that they are SS.
Which is why they've also mentioned that all German squads have got assault fire capability.
Right.
Now, in the A20, in the nationality distinctions under SS, it says in 1944, 1945, SS squads have assault fire capability.
Right.
So the firepower factor should be underlined, and you can actually do that in Vasl.
I think so, yeah, right? Yeah. So you can do it on the SS units. You can't do it on the non-SS, specifically SS units. Like,
and this is the issue with using those black counters as well. And this is also, and this is why you should, and I know people say it's nitpicking, but it's not, because this is part of playing ASL at a consistent level. Pay very close attention to the scenario card, particularly the units and the depictions of the units. If it doesn't say assault engineers on the 548s, don't put a 548, because that 4 smoke exponent is huge. In a game like this, it's even more. It becomes very important in other games where you may have white phosphorus capability, smoke grenade capability.
Right.
But in this game, that 4 smoke exponent can be a game breaker.
Yeah. Yeah. Especially when he knows he's going to be
sorry to belabor the point.
No, not at all. This is part of the learning.
This is something that will absolutely get hammered into you if you go to a tournament. You will get absolutely slammed because you can actually lose a game through using incorrect units. It's an immediate forfeit.
I think if you're not in a starter kit, the Americans can always throw phosphorus.
Yeah, what? Oh, you mean ASL? Yeah. Americans have white phosphorus. Yeah.
That's
I screwed that up in my game. I screwed that up in my game, thinking that my Germans can throw it. That's how often I play Germans. I'm just used to playing Americans, so that was a screw up on my part. So ignore that in my game if you're remembering that from my game, or smack me or hammer me on that. But yeah, this is and this is what this is.
This is about preparation, pre-game preparation.
Yeah, and again, questions. This is the same reason why. I mean, you guys might get tired of my questions. What about this? You know, when I nitpick scenario special rules, this is where this particular scenario, for example, is one of the reasons why you really need to look at the SSRs to see what they give you, because, like Pete said, like say if this 447 fails ELR, he's 2 half squads, right? That can rally at the SS increased morale level, instead of being a 436 who probably isn't going to rally the rest of the game. You know, so that's huge. Plus his broken morale level by being SS would go up by 1, which it normally wouldn't. Which, unfortunately for me, I couldn't even roll an 8 at the end of the game. But every pip counts. And Pete already mentioned the smoke exponent here. The assault fire, I love being able to put assault fire things. Unfortunately, you can't put on the 447s. I don't think. No, you can't. But that's cool. And I didn't even realize about, because a lot of people like using the black SS counters, and no problem with that. But the problem is they're black SS counters. They're not just black German counters, right? They're specifically SS counters.
Even if you're not using the black counters, there are 447s with the
Right.
SS symbol in the blue, and it's very important to distinguish between those and the ones on the scenario card.
Right.
Just like, that LMG, using the wrong LMG, that's the difference between a 4-column and a 6-column attack at point blank range.
Right.
And you will be firing at point. And also, the 548 has 8 firepower factor.
Right.
If it's
instead of 6.
Prepping.
And the breakdown's different.
Yeah.
The breakdown's different from the German one. So
breakdown's different, but also assault fire.
Right. You notice the guy in the back has a correct one. Again, this is just something that happens in the course of the game.
Attention to detail.
Yeah, it's just
attention to detail when pulling counters.
Right. And I do it sometimes. For me, what I usually do is I happen to leave bazookas. I usually have like 4 or 5 bazookas in the game. They're spread out through 3 different setup units. I'll usually leave a bazooka or 2 off for whatever the hell reason. There's just too many of them. LMG is the same sort of thing. And again, this might just be I reach for the LMG over here, and this one was right there, or I glance over it, and that's one I pick. And so again, but it's you making sure, and with the 548s makes a big difference. With the 658s, not so much. But this one here is key. That's 8 firepower or 16 firepower at 4 hex range.
Now, this is also a really good example, and even if it wasn't made from a one of those people who've done a setup before, this is why you don't use other people's setups, because you have no idea if they've actually selected the correct counters.
Right.
You should always pull your own counters from the tray.
Hey, Pete, this is Jay. And if I'm getting, it's back to this ELR question, because it's important for me to understand. And I understand your point, but I'm reading the Q&A. Now, I guess there's probably argument as to how valid the Q&A is, but this is the Q&A that's published on the internet. And there's a Q&A there that talks about a specific scenario. It's scenario 23, and all that is just SS. And they have that one scenario just has an ELR of 4, and the Q&A says, yes, for that one there, the ELR is 4. But then it also says in the...
Can you point me to the actual Q&A? Because I've actually got the Q&A up at the moment.
Yeah, it's Q&A. How do I tell you which one?
23?
For scenario 23. It's for scenario 23.
Is that among the
under
ruins?
the Noel trees.
Oh, under the Noel trees, okay.
Yeah, and if there's a way that I could... Yep. But what I'm finding is there's a caveat in that Q&A. And the caveat says, unless other squad types are present in the order of battle, along with the combat engineers or SS, or combat engineers, SS partisans, paratroopers, blah, 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 of which the OB given ELR applies only to the other squad types. So in our scenario here, there's a mix. We have SS who have the underlying ELR, and then there's other squads that have no underlying ELR. If I'm reading the Q&A right, it implies then, because there's a mix of units, that the SS have an ELR of 5, and that the non-SS units have an ELR of 4. I don't. If I could.
Yeah. Can you? What's the actual first rules case that's mentioned in there?
A.123 in the Q&A.
So it's
how do I?
A25, A24.123.
I'm sorry, A1.23.
Oh, 1.23. Okay, just bear with me just for a moment. Okay, so and that's on the that's in the class. Oh, right, that's in classes Q&A. Just bear with me.
Yeah, it's
just a
in
moment.
classes Q&A.
I could. Oh, yeah,
I call it in the
otherwise-
middle. There's 3 sections to that Q&A. There's
Yeah,
3
just bear
different
with me.
compilations. It's in the middle section of the Q&A.
Okay, yeah, that's fine. Just bear with me.
Right.
I've just got to find the Q&A.
Right. That goes to the personnel counters
Search,
listing.
search for the words, do the SS units in
Okay,
scenario
can you just
23.
hold on? Because I'm actually trying to locate my copy of the Q&A.
Yeah.
No problem.
So I'm going to be a while.
So
Okay, so I'll be a while.
right. So that is pretty much that says if you have an underscore, and just like you said, Jay, when this point is exceeded, if the morale number is underlined, the unit is given an ELR of 5 and is subject to ELR failure. So sometimes what you'll see in situations like that is this scenario. Let's say all of the units were 658s, all the squads were 658s, and yet it said the ELR was 4. Would that be a typo in the scenario?
No, because the way this Q&A is written is
Oh,
it
don't worry
would
about the
mean that.
don't worry about the Q&A.
Okay, sorry.
So, because the Q&A is, like I say, they can be wrong. I always go back to the rules.
Right.
So, based on the rules, when the unit has an underscored morale factor, morale numbers underlined. So, what other units do you have in your OB? You have your squads, and what else do you have?
Leaders,
Okay.
crews.
Are your leaders, do they have an underscored morale factor?
No.
Okay, so if this scenario had all SS squads and it said ELR 4, and there was not a scenario special rule specifically stating those units have a lowered ELR, as 19.123 I think states, under unit substitution, that ELR 4 would apply to the leaders, but not apply to the squads because they have the underscore of their morale factor. So the squads would have ELR 5, the leaders would have an ELR 4.
Which was my understanding.
Right.
And that's why I'm just trying to make sure that I understand the rules so that when I'm playing opponent, I'm applying the rules correctly. And if it's one way or the other, that's fine as long as I have the correct interpretation.
Right. But the kicker runs in, like Pete was saying, if you go at 19.132 and it specifically states whenever a SSR, not just the OB. So in this one it has the OB. And when the SSR says the ELR applies to these guys, then they suffer replacement normally. And so that, again, like I say, it's not an easy thing to kind of keep straight. It's almost like first fire, right? You got to keep things straight. But once you kind of like compare those two, is like I say, you could still have an ELR 4, but have all your units being SS underscored because your leaders are not underscored. They don't, obviously they don't split into 2 half squads, and that's pretty much what the point is the integrity of the unit is maintained. They just split in half, and then they could recombine and become their full SS capabilities at that point. No leaders that I know of have ever been assigned an underscore to the morale factor because I don't think it would ever apply. The only thing I would say is leaders don't suffer ELR failure. That's the easiest way to put that. Otherwise, you're just making it much more difficult. But yeah, that's what the and again, the rules specifically say that, and just combining those 2 different rule sections would be a section. And just like Pete said, or maybe you said, it says likewise with a mixed OB of MMC, both with and without underscored, an ELR of less than or equal to 4 would apply to those MMCs with underscore morale factor only via SSR. And that's the situation we have here.
So I've got to the Q&A. So I'll just read it. In any scenario where the only MMC in a side's OB, i.e. printed on the scenario card, have underlined morale, but the OB given an ELR is less than or equal to 4, and no SSR is in effect, does the OB given a ELR apply to the MMC with underlined morale? Well, first off, it says only MMC, where the MMC only have underlying morale. We've got a mix of MMC with both underlying morale and non-underlying morale. So that answer does not apply to this scenario.
So in this scenario, the SS all have an ELR of 5.
Or,
Is that right?
No, they should. The SS should have 5. The non-SS
5,
will have 4.
4.
Yeah, 5 and 4.
The underlying ones will have 5, and then everybody else has an ELR of 4.
Right.
Exactly.
And
Then we're on the same page. Good.
Yeah, I actually explained it incorrectly because I made the error myself.
Yeah, and
No problem. But I appreciate the discussion. That this really helped to clarify things. Thank you.
But this is also a reason to make sure you pick the correct counters.
right. As you notice, as we're discussing here, the 447 underlined, 548 underlined, that for all intents and purposes, that would give those units ELR 5. For all intents and purposes,
and no unit replacement.
Right. And so, which changes the scenario big time, especially, just 4 ELR is pretty damn good. I mean, but and again, that's the one reason why I threw my 447 off the board, is if that guy gets shot, he's going to get broken, and whatever. I just didn't want to have to deal with that crap. I want my 2 free points, and I'm taking it, and that's what I did. Was that a mistake? That could have been, but I didn't want to have that guy broken and not able to be rallied, because that's what my plan was for that unit. But again, I just wanted to show the particular OB here, and again, it's just one of those things, and that's also applies to the starter kit games where you guys are playing your starter kit games. You're going to have these combinations of stuff. Don't assume anything unless it specifically says something. Then don't apply it. Right. That's what they call Caltra, or count on what the rules allow. The rules don't allow this guy to have an underlying morale, or this guy to be assault engineer, or whatever the case may be. They're just simple mistakes. But note that those can make an impact in the game, however so slight. And again, most of the games that you guys play, some of the times, I mean, if this guy, again, like Pete said, if this guy disembarks and starts throwing smoke for the rest of the game, so these guys can get by, huge difference. And I think I forgot on my game, I forgot to increase the smoke making capabilities of my half track coming on. I don't know, maybe I rolled an 11 anyway, but he has a smoke 10, and which is huge. And I forgot that. I thought it was just smoke 9, but so that's that. But that's just part, again, that's normal in a game, guys. That's normal for you to come across and make these little errors like that. And again, this just shows you the value. I mean, I'm so glad they played this scenario, because this didn't happen in the other games. It just shows you that each groups of players approaches. Some guys didn't use, I think I used the blue. I think another guy used the blue counters. These guys used black. And I think the other guys, they switch between the modes, and this is one of the pitfalls when you're switching between the modes, because some guys love these black counters. Some guys think they're appealing. Whatever. I mean, I think the Italians are appealing. Some people just hate the Italian colors. But
I find it difficult. I find it very difficult to actually figure out the counters when they're in black.
Yeah,
which is why I don't use them in Vasl, and why I actually got rid of all my black SS counters in physical form as well.
Right.
I just find them very difficult to read.
Right.
And I've got a 32. And I've got a 32-inch monitor.
Yeah, like the half tracks. If you see the half tracks off the board, technically those are closed top vehicles, right? Because they're not white on the inside like the other vehicles were in the first replay. But the blue color on their movement points designates those counters as open topped. So it just throws another rule that you have to remember. And I don't really have a problem with half tracks, because you're used to playing with half tracks by the time you've reached this scenario, typically. It's when the armored cars come into play, and the Germans have a lot of armored cars that are early war SS. Some are closed top, some are open top, and it really throws a monkey wrench as a defender fighting against those units, because you might interpret them to be closed topped because that's what they look like on the counter, but you have to take that extra blue thing into account. But if you're used to that, not a problem. But not everybody's used to that,
And your opponent may not be used to it, and
right,
that's also something you have to take into account.
right.
The default with any optional, and the black counters are very optional,
Yep.
is that where there is and this applies to any game of ASL, the default is always default to the standard.
Right.
So,
and the standard
like
would
with
be
the
white open top for the thing.
well,
And
blue counters,
yeah,
blue counters.
yeah, right here you could obviously substitute the blue half tracks in here, and you wouldn't lose the effect of the SS counters that you have in your playing enjoyment. So, just to make it easier for your opponent, especially your partisans, which then realize that those tanks, like we covered in the last scenario, are open top, and I can kick their ass when I jump into close combat. If I think they're closed top, I might not, one or two times, if I forego close combat because I think I misinterpret them being closed top, can make or break a game. And this game is pretty tight to begin with. So
I'll be honest. The black SS counter is like is a pet bugbear of mine, and that's purely based on the non-standard implementation of the counters, and in terms of on what you see compared to the real, and also it's like the IIFT.
oh right,
I just don't play. It's an optional rule. It's an option for both players, but both players have to agree to it. That's the thing. It's a combined effort. A lot of the issues with counter substitution and stuff like that. Basically, the big takeaway to this: take 5 extra minutes before you set up the scenario, just to double check you've got the right counters.
Yep.
Take your time. There's no rush. And this is why pickup games, when you're on Vasl and you're jonesing for a game, they don't work, because you make mistakes in counter selection, and it can waste. Effectively, it can break a scenario before it's even started. But that's a hot button topic of mine. So I'll leave it there.
Yeah. So let's proceed. Again, I think this is an important concept, just in terms of a pregame preparation and scenarios, special rule discussion and application of the different units. Unit substitution could apply during this game, and that's why we kind of went off on this description of the particular units. And again, something you wanted, the details that you want to see, I didn't even see this the first time through when I replayed it, only later. The same thing with the LMG. But for me, these kind of things stick out. I'm used to looking for stuff like that, but no, it doesn't stick out for everybody. That's all there is to it. And but it's okay. Not a big deal. Again, same thing like the previous game. They disembarked early. I screwed up my ammunition supply. Everybody so far, everybody's on par for making little errors. Okay, and but sometimes some errors can be bigger than others. So he pops the motorcycle guy here with 7, blasts him there. Casualty reduction from the morale check, and he's got to bail out because he's failed the morale check. I double checked the rules on this one here. The motorcycle would not be eliminated. There might be a discussion on that, but it has an example of units bailing out that the motorcycle is not eliminated. It does reference it as being a support weapon, but the support weapons was not subject to a K result or a KIA result. So the motorcycle technically could be there, and for all intents and purposes, the partisans can jump on the motorcycle and, do some sort of weirdness to it. So that's what I always like to try and do something stupid, crazy. But regardless, he takes a
points.
Yeah, he takes a good shot there, which is a point, right? Free casualty point right then and there for the partisans. Remember, like we said, 8's the magic number. He has to chase us when we hit 8, for the most part. Blast point blank here. That guy goes up in smoke. He rolls a snake eyes for the IFT. Bad news there. Partisans, although it may have made a slight difference here, but the Partisans don't cower. I'm pretty sure the Partisans don't cower as a nationality trait. I might be mistaken. That might be Chinese or something like that. But after Mark and I played as Chinese, I don't even know anymore. You know, so.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. As somebody who played the communist Chinese.
Am I right, Mark? Does he not cower to the Partisan? The Partisan does not cower, right?
The Partisans don't counter, and communist Chinese are treated as partisan for all purposes.
So in that aspect, the any subsequent shots from this unit will not be a morale check. But he did get a good chunk off that guy, right? That's a 5.48 LMG and a truck. So that's 3 points there. He got 2 points here. That's 5 points on his first volley. Partisans are doing really well. And, of course, drops residual. At this point, the... let's see. At this point, I believe the column can disband. And that's what you see here. For whatever reason, the 6+1 hops out and the truck just hauls ass. Maybe the driver kicked him out or opened the door and shoved him out. I don't know. I don't know what the hell happened there. But he blows through the residual, takes a shot, no effect.
Where does it say that Partisans don't cower? A25.24 does not reflect that.
Maybe it's in the Russian ones. Maybe
It may be specific to Chinese communists.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking.
But Partisans definitely, they have an ELR of 5. They never surrender by the route phase method. They are considered neither elite, including SMC, nor inexperienced, and never become disrupted. But they do cower.
Maybe it's the disruption.
Because again, concentrate on what the rules allow.
Maybe it is the Chinese section. What's the Chinese say? No, that's H.
But yeah, Partisans generally cower.
Yeah, he's right. Yeah, Red Chinese squads, it's G18.3. All red Chinese are considered partisans, but are also immune from cowering.
Right, it adds it on the end. Absolutely.
Yep.
Okay. Good deal. All right, no worries. So that could be a mistake like someone like me could have made coming off of those particular sets of scenarios, getting used to these guys not cowering like that. And again, it's like used to these black counters being SS because they're black. You know, the same sort of misconceptions could apply. But so he moves this guy back here. To be honest with you, he already took a shot there. And if this guy's just going to sit back and wait to kind of leave the board later, what do you guys think about this guy back here? What are your thoughts on that? Because you're obviously saving it to exit later, right? He dropped this guy down here, save this guy here. What about just moving it off the board? Unless you're going to use it for transport later, it's unlikely that he's going to fire at it because you got other juiciness coming. I don't think I'd fire at the Kuba wagon moving off the board. Maybe he could SFF on it, but again, if he SFFs, then he's not firing at these guys. So he could certainly move it back. He took a residual firepower attack anyway. So a 2 is just what it's a 4, a 1 is a 3. A little bit better, maybe 8% difference, but I might have tried to bait one of his shots, get rid of that concealment. And then for a Kuba wagon that can't transport a full squad, I think the risk is worth the. That's a point. I mean, it's every point counts. You guys know that. But anyway, I just noted that it's like, oh, I would have just, skittle that guy forward. But again, not my plan. Not a big deal. Now these guys start disembarking, and the trucks are just kind of moving out of the way. They jump here, gain wall advantage because this unit was in the building and did not have a wall advantage marker on him. Now, the unit could have started the game with wall advantage, and then certain things would apply there, but he happened not to. So this is a good move for the Germans. Jumping there, grabbing some wall. At least they're not going to be naked out there. 1, 2, 3. Yeah, 1, 4. Okay, so the LMG shoots that truck in the back. Breaks the guy. 6. Oh, 2 morale check. 6 on the 2. Maybe it's a. Oh, I think they're using IIFT. So it might have been a 3 attack on this guy here, which might make a difference on the morale check. And that's like people saying about the IFT. It's an optional rule. I think they were using IFT, which again, if you're not using IFT, that unit doesn't break. Since they were using IFT, guy breaks. Slight difference in the game. He could still drive off the board. Okay, question, guys. You may or may not know this, but let's say this guy remains broken the rest of the game, and he drives him off of the board. He gets over to GG5, trucks cruise along, hauling ass, smoke behind him, and he drives off the board with a broken unit, which you can do. How many victory points did he score? How many points is the truck worth? 2, 3, 1. Trucks are 1. The squad, normally, if he were in good order, would be 2. But since he is broken, he would be worth 0 in exit victory point purposes. So he could get that squad off the board, but obviously couldn't rally them off the board, and he would be 0. He'd be probably better off parking him right on the exit, hopefully self-rally, and then move off the board. And as a passenger, this broken unit, because he is not routing, the vehicle is moving. This vehicle with the broken unit can reduce the range to enemy units, whether they're good order or not, because the broken unit is not routing. A slight distinction in the rules. So if you're a passenger, you can't be a rider, because a broken rider has to fall off, but a passenger may be broken and remain a passenger. He could disembark, but that's his choice. And whether he does that or not, don't know. And looks like he unloads the gun. He jumps this half squad right here, or jumps the squad right there. They do not surrender. And so the SS will score, or the Germans will score 2 points for that one squad. And now the fallback of the Partisan comes into play. The half tracks come into play. They take up good positions. You know, this is actually a benefit for the Partisans, to be honest with you, because now it protects his unarmored vehicles from this LMG that was on second level. You know, he has to fire through that smoke because it penetrates up to where this guy's level. You know, maybe not here, but these guys should be okay on the side, or a couple of them.
Just a quick point of historical interest, and that is actually relevant to this particular scenario. This scenario appeared in the '89 annual, which is also, so it was play tested long before that saw publication.
Right.
The IIFT first appeared in the '89 annual.
Right.
If I recall correctly, other than, I think it may have appeared in the general, but I'm not sure.
Right.
But this scenario was never play tested with the IIFT. And with a small scenario like this, the extra effects of the original IIFT, not the modified one that came out later, are exacerbated.
Right.
So I would be very hesitant, as I normally am, about the IIFT, but in this particular scenario, it's almost certainly going to have an effect.
Right.
That outside of all proportion.
Yeah, they're all 3-7. Did someone load up a game? Because if someone loaded up a game, their pieces are showing up on the board. I figured that out a while ago. So what I would do is just open up another Vasl and go into another room, and then that way you could watch both maps at the same time. But yeah, absolutely. That's kind of interesting that the IFT wasn't even played with this particular one. Or heck, it could have been. Maybe it was testing. Anyway, Partisans go back, start withdrawing. Germans start pushing hard. Again, he's got lots of units to push and try and essentially crush the partisan defense. Everyone stays together. Everyone attacks together. One thing of note, again, OB, we covered this before. This vehicle does not have a machine gun, and this vehicle's machine gun may not fire in the vehicular covered arc. Neither may fire in the vehicle covered arc. Yeah, but this one might. This one does. Yeah, but this A machine gun cannot fire in the vehicle covered arc, and this vehicle does not have a machine gun. I don't think it made a difference in this game. I think the rolls were high enough. But again, that's just another thing. When they have little stars on them, check the vehicle notes. Check the vehicle notes. And because ASL only has this counter in that form, and it does have multiple counters of this form, it doesn't have one without a machine gun, to my knowledge. They put it on there, and they just put a note. And I don't think it has a machine gun until like September. But the 37L says cannot fire in the vehicle covered arc. Because it's AA, people are gonna may have the misconception that it could fire 360. In this case, it can't. The biggest clue for that, a lot of times, and the Stugs have this, are notorious for this. The Stugs are like the inverse of this vehicle. This vehicle does not have a circled covered arc like on its gun, so therefore it's considered a non-turreted vehicle. And that kind of gives the clue ways. If it's not turreted, you're going to have all that gun crap in the way. It has an A machine gun, and so a lot of times that will obscure this vehicle here. It's a coaxial machine gun, so it's going to be alongside the 75 in contrast to this A here. Even though neither machine gun, this one doesn't exist and this one does not fire in the vehicle covered arc, that's just something you have to make sure you catch in the notes. Because for all intents and purposes, this vehicle firing forward at Partisans running across the street has only got the 37. Yeah, it's got a 3 rated fire, so it's not too bad. But this one does not have 4 firepower, which can make a big difference in units running across the street. So again, I think I pointed that out in the other ones. Partisans just kind of back up because they know where the Germans have to go, and I think they've inflicted a number of casualties, and so the Partisans have the benefit of knowing what the VC are, right? They know what the Germans have to do, and now they just sit and wait for the Germans to come. Because they inflicted those early casualty points here, back over here, they could just hightail it back to a better position. And that's kind of what they did. And I think somebody got eliminated somewhere, and he just doesn't have enough points to move off. He could possibly eliminate some units here, but this is latter. This is the end of turn 5, it looks like. So 2 turns, maybe to capture some more casualty points. I don't know if he had that capability or not, based upon how he could try to kill those units. So, but anyway, this is where they ended it. And again, knowing that you've got a baseline of victory points that you've accumulated, moving back, he doesn't even have to fire on the half tracks. I mean, at this point, he might have reached the point where he can fire just on the unarmored vehicles, and that might be enough to give his point values to eliminate those the Germans from completing the victory conditions. So, although he does have lots of units, I mean, he does a nice array of units left in the game, pretty powerful. He just doesn't have the he just may not have the units to make it off. So, again, another interesting scenario here where the Partisans, so far, all the Partisans have kind of meandered in this area, and the setup's been very similar for both. And let's just burn through the last one real quick. Does anyone have any other questions on that one there? 1, 2, I had another one here. I think Craig's got one. I think Craig and Eric's. So you could sync on me on this one. This is Craig and Eric's game. Craig is the Partisan, as Eric is the Germans. Again, blue guys coming on. Motion just like the last scenario. Oops. What the hell? Oh. Looks like he hightailed it or something like that. I'm not sure what the 7-0 is doing. Maybe just his line of sight. He hasn't even fired yet. He's letting the Germans come in. Now they unload. The 7-0 comes up here. And they all unload because the 7-0 is known to them. They start displacing units. I think they played a couple games. And I kind of like the way he marked the buildings to kind of like essentially note that they're cleared of partisans. They might be on the first level, but still the same idea, the basic principle applies, where you know that the guys aren't going to be like behind you in that little area.
Eric came in and cleaned out the upper floors because he was worried about the upper floors.
Yeah, and this is a good reminder. This is a good reminder. Say, okay, I don't have to worry about those guys in the back. It only took a little time. And again, most of the partisans, these partisans Craig's already moved his partisans in the back. And these guys just kind of pop out. Was this guy hidden, Craig? Was this guy hidden?
Yes, and he was hidden illegally, we decided.
Okay, good. So you learned that was a legal hidden place. But again, this is something that you'll do often. A lot of guys do often. I see players that have been playing for 25 years do this all the time, guys. So don't be the take home. Don't be afraid to make little errors like this. This is where we're learning.
Yeah, we make mistakes on each other occasionally. And it's like, okay.
Yeah, this is every game. Every game has got stuff like this, and this is not a big deal. Not a big deal.
Not at all. If it was a gun, it would be different.
yeah, exactly. Or like
if it was an anti-tank gun, it'd be completely different.
Or if you,
as I learned, it's not a very good defensive spot after all.
Right. I think the last game we saw, the partisan player moved a guy into that position, and the Germans just swarmed him. Why is this not such a great position? Why do you think?
No route for one.
No route for one. That's a good starting point. The other point is
could be encircled.
Could be encircled. And what about being between buildings?
Oh, street.
No street fighting capability from that location.
Right.
You're not a building. If you're here, or here, and pretty much any of the other building hexes, you have a decent free street fighting ability. This one doesn't. You just got first fire and subsequent first fire, and that's it. No street fighting capability. So the half tracks can just blow by you and not have to worry about it. In this case, he's just swarming you with his SS, so he doesn't have to worry about the half tracks dealing with you. Again, nice movement back for the partisans. Not taking much. Unfortunately, the partisans haven't inflicted a lot of damage yet. But now we're starting to fight. We're starting to fire at these guys. A lot of good broken units. More units popping up. Pinned guy. That's a good shot. Half track to come on the north side. Armor leader pops up. Still concealed. Keeping concealment, moving back, being tricky. And again, I think you got a couple games of this, but
yeah, we played 2 games.
Oh, I think
or was it 3?
Yeah, I think you played 3. I think what happened here. I'm not sure if it was sniper, but I remember going over one. Is this vehicle got immobilized? But
right.
and so
and then we had lots of questions about a vehicle being in between you.
Oh yeah, right.
V6.
Yeah.
And could it? How it affected fire between them and all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, and so what we have here is we have a bypassing enemy vehicle in the same hex as the enemy squad. So this would essentially sleaze freeze him, restrict his fire capabilities. And
inside my hex.
Yeah, because he's inside your hex, hex and in line of sight. I think he has to be in line of sight, and so that would restrict your fire. But again, I think we discussed this before. You fired on this thing here, Whereas I think you actually had a better chance of destroying the tank, this AFV, which is worth the same amount of victory points here. But again, that's just one of those.
Plus, we were trying to figure out is that a hindrance?
Yeah. Well, if let's say this vehicle were bypassing this location, then it would be.
But if it's in my hex, it's not.
Oh no, if it's in his hex, I don't think it would be a hindrance because it's not between you and the target. If you were over here, I think the hindrance would apply. Vehicles and bypass might make a different distinction on that. I don't think it does though. I don't think it does. Because he's not between a hex between your target. Obviously, if he drops smoke, smoke is obviously different.
I mean, he was parked there. He wasn't moving.
Yeah, and so I think we discussed this. They're both worth 5 points. You had actually been easier to kill the half track as well with street fighting. But anyway, the attack came through on this truck here, and I think I remember this fight here. You're losing a couple. Germans lose a couple vehicles here. Advanced fires, and I think is this the one where the gun pushes up?
Yeah, I think that was when I was Germans.
Okay. But anyway, what can happen here is what happened in Craig's other scenario is I think the vehicle got immobilized, so he disembarked the gun, pushed it up to the location with another truck, and then loaded it up on that truck, which was very smart to do, to get that sucker off the map. And I think that truck happened to be immobilized again too, so it was kind of hilarious. They're doing
I'm remembering the one where I took the gun off and he took it over and pushed it at me when I was the Russian. Maybe this is the one.
Yeah, I don't know, but you did some cool things with the gun. Yeah, you moved into the hex. Yeah, this is the one. You moved into the hex and then you loaded it up again, I think. So you get lots of point blank residual firepower. Very important to lay that down, especially against these unarmored vehicles. You know, although the one residual firepower will, you'd have to roll 3. It's a free shot. It's a free shot, guys. It's a free shot. And so half track's moving its way up. Everyone's getting ready to get the hell off. What turn is this? Turn 6, so this is late in the game. Jumping guys in close combat. That guy's pinned. Hopefully he's going to be eliminated. We got 2 big close combats. We got 1 kill. We got another kill there. Another kill there. So 3 and a melee in the last hex. So out of 4 close combats, 3 went well for the Germans. And I'm not sure. Let's see. This is going to be turn. Bottom of turn 6. So they're in a melee. They jump in there. They go to melee. And then I think at least this might be the end of the game. Yeah, that's the end of the game there. Did you end up winning this one on points?
I was just trying to figure that out, and I do not remember.
Yeah, I don't know. I see a bunch of guys lined up down here. I think it was super close, regardless of the thing. I think it was super close on that point. But the similarities I wanted to draw between the scenarios is it looks like the Partisans did the same thing regardless where they were set up. It looked like most of them were set up in the same area. Even the Partisans in the one game that were set up back here. I think there was a game you guys played. There was guys set up back here. Again, doesn't really matter because when the Germans come on the map over here and you get attacked, most of the time they just disembark and work their way through. The Partisans make their way back here anyway without shooting at anybody. And so it doesn't make a difference, almost technically, if you set them up back here. If you set them up back here and reveal them at the last turn, it could make a slight difference, very slight, but you didn't fire during the entirety of the game. And so at that point, the German's probably going to have the number he's going to get off or not. And he's probably would have annihilated the rest of your units. Again, even if you make little miscues like that. But the point I was making is all the Partisans seem to gravitate in this key zone, this key gauntlet for the Germans to go through. And it seems like either A, if you can get past them fast enough, or if you can just blast them and punch your whole way through quick enough and hopefully have some smoke. There did seem to be a lot of smoke being placed anywhere, although this guy's got one here. That's like Pete was saying, if you've got that 548 with a 4 smoke making generator, that's a big difference. And you see lots of little destroyed trucks around the area. And so that smoke could save 1 or 2 of those trucks. And many of these games, I think, came down to 2 or 3 points. And that can make a difference between the two. But for this particular scenario, it looks like the defensive plan was the same for all of them. I like to see different defenses for a scenario to make it a little bit more tasty and a little bit more variety. But I'm hesitant to try and figure out, if the Partisans go first and if they don't get the rolls early, they're just going to be surrounded and annihilated. So all the casualties really don't make that much of a difference. But if they can do some casualties, withdraw, slow up, immobilize, take some more casualties, then I think they can win the game. So unfortunately, I think it's might be a little bit linear. I do like the scenario overall in the terms that it shows that you've got a small force, it seems to be balanced well. You've got a small force, low firepower, can still easily win the games. And I think of the last 5 on the ASL Scenario Archive, I think all of them were Partisan wins. And I think a lot of players would just say, this is a walkthrough for the SS. And as we know, as we've seen here, through all the scenarios, it's not quite so much a walkthrough. I think the SS are sort of like dancing on needles, where they really can't afford to lose too much. And if they do lose stuff, they really have to make the Partisans pay. And that's easier said than done, because all they have to do is retreat. So, but anyway, that's the scenario of the month. It's like 4 weeks overdue, but the Zon with the wins are being completed. I've got a number of those, and those are much more varied than the particular layout here. It seems like the Germans get here, and this is where they win or lose at this point. So, any other comments before we call it a night? It's just about 7:30. We start a little late.
Eric must have won this one. I don't.
Yeah, you guys played a couple of them, so I'm not sure if you flipped them, but
anyway, thanks for everything, Stu and everyone.
Yeah, but like I said, we saw in every single scenario, mine included, subtle little errors, and they were all different types of errors. Mine was capabilities, one was OB, one was setup, one was usage of a particular rule. And so, as you noted, everybody made errors in all their games. So that's the uniform take-home lesson: is you're going to make them. Don't worry about it. Continue to play your game. It's, this is at least 4 different games from 8 different people, and everybody made mistakes. And the skill level or the experience, the skill level is different from experience, but the experience and the skill level was varied from very beginning entering ASL to been playing ASL pretty much their entire adult life. So you are going to make mistakes. Don't worry about it. Move on. As long as you recover, like you said here in Y5, you knew that was a legal placement after you guys were probably talking about it. That's the take-home lesson, is note your mistakes and try not to do that next time, and call it a good game, and then start up another one the next week or so. So
I like the ASL rule that says if it's in the past, it's in the past.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
get over it, and next game play different.
Yeah, I think it's funny that a lot of players, some of the ASL players that read the SK rulebook, they say, well, that rule doesn't exist in the SK rulebook. So again, that little thing right there it's kind of funny that it's not in there, and everyone has been referring to that rule for 50 years, it seems like. So, but anyway, thanks, gentlemen. Thanks for sticking through all this. I know we had that long ELR discussion, but I think that was huge. It's huge. And it's very important to understand. We may not understand it from the discussion, but just go read the rule book and read those sections carefully. And there were only like 2 sections, 2, maybe 3, were very small paragraphs that apply to that. And that's just what you deal with, And if you forget it, you just move on. So, all right.
All right, then.
All right. Thanks a lot, guys. Thanks for sticking around. And
Yep.
Thank you, Stu.
and
Yep. Good night, everyone.
go have some good games. All right.
Yep. Sounds good.
Great stuff,
Okay.
folks. Thank you very much. Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Okay, bye.
Well, there you go, Reconners. 3 excellent games to watch. Lots of stuff to learn. I think this is a decent game to start with even new players, because what it does, it kind of trains the new player or gets them used to looking in the rule book for a simple section, meaning Convoy in this particular game, and applying that section to their scenario, right? They've got their troops, they've got the enemy units hidden, right? Most of those guys stay quiet for a while. Low firepower, although they do have an impact on unarmored vehicles, as we saw quite effectively. But what it does is it trains the new players to, okay, this scenario deals with this particular rule section. It adds deep snow, it adds convoys, it adds something other fairly small section of rules, but yet it has a decent impact on the game. Weather has a good impact. Scenario special rules in terms like this of the convoy, decent impact on the game. You're kind of restricted in your actions for a while, and then you're let loose and free, and then all the actions come into play. So ASL is a game of learning, and you will, if you stop learning ASL, then you've mastered everything. Unless you've mastered everything, which there's only probably like one person in the entire game that's mastered everything, then just be advised that you will always learn something new every game. You should be learning something new every game. And sometimes, you know, convoys, terrible rule, you don't like it, guess what? There's like 4 scenarios with convoys. Don't worry about it. But if it's something you like and enjoy, then seek out some of those other scenarios that might have similar instances. It's as simple as that. And ASL is, all the scenarios are changing based on the scenario special rules, their victory conditions, the units involved, etc., etc. That's why we like it. That's why we play it. Thanks for watching. Now go play some ASL.